pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Withers, would you please read the special meeting notice?
I certainly will. February 10th, 2019, two members of the Municipal Council from Mark J. Cooper, Council President. Council is by authority of Article 2, Section 2-7C of the Attleboro Home Rule Charter. I hereby call a special meeting of the Municipal Council as follows. Date, Thursday, February 13th, 2020. Time, 6:30 p.m. Place, Council Chambers. Purpose, to discuss any emergency measure presented or any other legal matter before the Council. Sincerely, Mark J. Cooper, Council President. CC, Mayor Paul Heroux.
Thank you, Mr. Withers. I'm going to assign that to the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee. And at this time, I'm going to invite Superintendent Tom Hayes and a member of, are you from ES&M or Campanelli Construction?
You want me to-
ES&M working for Campanelli.
Do you want me to read the communication first?
I'm sorry. And yes, would you read the regular communication, please? Thank you.
February
I messed up.
13th, 2020, dear municipal councilors. I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Wastewater Thomas Hayes regarding the donation of approximately 6,500 cubic yards or 10,400 ton of soil from the One Wall Street redevelopment project from Cragnell Properties LLC with an estimated value of approximately $116,000. As this project is scheduled to start on February 17th, 2020, and for the city to benefit from this donation, I ask that this request be considered an emergency. In accordance with Section 1-12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body to accept this generous donation to the City of Attleboro. Copies in your packets. In accordance with Article 2, Section 2-9B of the City Charter of the City of Attleboro, I respectfully request your honorable body to consider this as an emergency measure. Sincerely, Paul Heroux, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Withers, and I am going to assign that to the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee. And at this time, I'm going to ask Superintendent Tom Hayes and Doug Healy from ES&M, thank you, to speak on this matter, please.
Okay.
Welcome.
We have been in discussions with Cragnelli Properties in regards to the overburden they're gonna have when they remove soils for the construction of Renaissance South. We, in the past, have taken materials from other construction sites to use in our Phase 1 and Phase 2 landfill. We've never received such materials for the Phase 3 landfill. And after analysis performed by ES&M in testing, it was determined that the soils were safe for use in our sludge landfill and safe to be brought to the wastewater treatment facility and stored while we're using them. It would greatly save the department the cost of purchasing clean fill material. We right now go through about 245 tons of material a week to bulk and cover the sludge at $11.15 per ton. We have not received, like I said, any material at this new landfill, so the cost of disposal this year is significantly higher than in the past. So this is a great way to offset that and reduce the amount of funds we need to spend on material for cover.
I was very, excuse me, I was very shocked when you had told me that you spend that much money each week.
I'm anticipating anywhere from $140,000 to $160,000 this year.
Oof.
We need to bulk the sludge at a 1-to-1 ratio by volume, and then we also need to dress it with 2 inches of cover daily. And then when we close off an area, we move to another section, we didn't have to put a foot of clean gravel cover on it. So it's very expensive.
So Tom, will you still get your weekly deliveries
We're
to build up?
We're still going to get what was budgeted, yeah, so this will build up a reserve, because, this soil doesn't come all the time. There's other materials out there, but not of this quality. Most of the materials we received in the past, we had to store inside the cell because they weren't appropriate for storing just on the ground, whereas this material is, and we don't have the ability in this new landfill to do that, so we couldn't take these other type of materials. We have nowhere within the cell to store them right now.
Does anyone else have questions? Please, Councilor DeSimone.
Tom, I didn't quite hear what you said. Can you repeat what you just said, please? You haven't been able to accept all material because
We haven't accepted materials for this new cell yet, this new Phase 3 landfill. We haven't taken in materials. There's been none offered to us and none available. They are out there. We had them offered to us for Phase 1 and Phase 2 across the street. And the type of materials we're taking over there weren't appropriate for storing on this side. We would have had to have stored them within the footprint of the landfill itself, and it's just,
Is that because of the structure of the soil, the content of the soil?
it's because the other material was COM97. It was coming from Boston and places. It was a much higher contamination level. So it was something that we couldn't just store anywhere we wanted. We had to contain it within the cell.
So you're allowed a certain level of contamination in the material when you use it?
By DEP, yes, we're allowed, when we use the COM97, we're allowed to use a certain amount of the COM97 material with clean material. But we have to manage how it's stored, and it has to be stored.
So what is COM 97?
It is just a standard that they classify the soil. I believe Doug might be able to answer, it's a DEP standard, I believe.
Right, it's a solid waste so all landfills in the Commonwealth are allowed to accept certain materials for capping and grading, and they're allowed to have low levels of contaminants in it because it's a secure facility. So what he's referring to is just a set of standards that all landfills in Massachusetts can use to bring in that construction material or whatever it might be. In this case, the soil that's being offered is much, much cleaner than this COM97. In fact, it's completely clean. If you wish, I could give you about just a 5-minute overview of where the soil is coming from and what the story is behind it.
Right, yeah.
So the automatic machines, South Properties, the section by South Main, that was where the old barn was, and then further down towards the 10 Mile Rivers where the cleaner side of automatic machines was. So that's where they did the warehousing and the office work. So in 2010, all those buildings were demolished, and that's when we had a chance to really go in and do a full site assessment on that entire property. So we did find some kerosene impact there, and I think I told you folks about that some time ago, and we recovered the kerosene, we dug out some contaminated soil, but all that soil was down below 15 feet. So the water table here is pretty deep, and the kerosene was way down below 15 to 18 feet. The soil we're cutting out here for this building is in the 0 to 12 to 13 foot range.
So Doug, was some of the material that we're talking about brought into the site to level it out when the buildings were removed?
No, it was all there. So nothing's been touched really since the buildings were removed, except we did dig out some of the kerosene contaminated soil. But again, that was, in order to get that out, we had to remove that top 15 feet of clean soil, put it aside, we dug out the kerosene, and then we put the clean back in. So now we're talking about cutting out the top 12 to 13 feet that's never been impacted. Did you folks all get a copy of this RAM plan?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the plan that was just submitted to DEP. It gives the whole, gives the whole history of the property. It gives the history of the site assessment work we did and the cleanup, and kind of walks you through the whole process. And then specific to the soil we're talking about here, there is a figure in this RAM plan that shows, this is a color version of it, but it's just it shows a bunch of grids and a whole about 30 soil borings on it. And each location there is where we've taken soil samples at very discrete intervals. And also within your RAM plan, there's many, many pages of data tables that look like this. And so with all those soil samples, we've tested it for everything you can imagine: petroleum, PCBs, metals, volatile organics, and then we've compared it to a number of different criteria. We compare it to the COM97, but again, that's a higher level of contamination that really doesn't apply here. The soil that's being designated for Pond Street has nothing in it, absolutely nothing. And this is as clean a soil as you'll ever get from any commercial gravel pit. So this is standard industry practice, the way we characterize the soil and prepared it for this project. And what you'll see in the in your RAM plan here is this color coding here. So we've really gone through and picked out all these different facilities that we're going to send the soil to. The Campanelli folks are out there laying out these grids on the ground, and we have people watching this so we know what soil is going where, and it's all documented in this plan. And when we're done with this project, we're going to further document, this is what went to Pond Street, this is what went to the Reynolds and Markman site, for example. That's another location. So there's probably 4 different places that this soil is going to go, depending on who needs it and what the levels are.
Counselor testimony.
Thank you, Vice President Jackson. Mr. Hayes, 2 questions, related questions.
Yeah.
This soil is going solely to wastewater department?
Solely to
and-
wastewater for our use.
And how are you going to ensure that it doesn't, would it ever be, could another department request the soil from you? And if so, how would you ensure that that doesn't happen?
We wouldn't allow such a request. It's going to be contained on our site within our fence line, and it's going to be used only in our landfill operation.
Thank you.
Nope. Counselor Conti.
So Doug, the soil the 6,500 yards, is that the total amount of soil they're gonna remove from the site?
Oh, no. There's about 21,000 cubic yards that's coming out, and that's well over 1,000 truckloads. It's a lot of soil. So they're taking out about 21,000. They're going to reuse about 4,000, and then I think Reynolds and Markman is going to get about 7 to 8,000, because as you know, with a landfill cleanup, we have some big holes to fill in there. A little bit of it is going to another landfill, and then there's what's called a soil reclamation facility in Bridgewater that will get some of this as well. So it really, that's the one facility that does charge for taking that soil. So it's really great for all parties to find good, inexpensive homes for this. It helps the city and it helps the project move forward.
Tom, did you get any material from Renaissance North?
Yes, I believe we did in the past.
Do you remember how much you got?
No, I didn't. I wasn't involved directly in that when that happened.
Don,
It
do
was
you remember?
it was close to the same amount, but that was a little different level. That was the COM 97 criteria, because it was on the other side, and that was an appropriate criteria for us to use.
And Tom, do you routinely get requests to accept soil from other?
We have not. In the past, we have from developers working up in the Boston area, but that, like I said, that was the COM 97 that went across the street. We've had no requests for some time now.
And so, Don, I'm guessing that when the landfill is done, it's gonna be capped? And then, isn't that what we did on the first one, Tom? When the sludge landfill is full.
Yes.
It gets capped, and then there's like soil and some plantings that are put on top?
Yeah, there's a top liner that basically makes it watertight, and then we plant. Yes, we're in the process of actually finalizing the contract to go out to bid for the landfill across the street, phase 2. The site's no longer available to take this material though, because of the final grading and that needs to be done. There's no room to put this material right now. It would actually be in a way, because that was the first place we looked to take it. But there's just nowhere to put it because of the grading that needs to be done now, because that landfill's been closed.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen,
Thank you.
very much for being here, and thanks for your donation.
Thank you.
So this special meeting's sole purpose was to only discuss this matter. We're not going to committee of the whole, not gonna have any other discussions. We're going moving right along. There's only one committee report this evening. So Councilor Conti, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Reporting for Capital Improvement City Development Committee from the docket of March 3rd, 2020, I adopt the following energy emergency preamble. that the Attleboro Municipal Council vote to take action as provided by the city charter, section 2-9B, regarding the emergency which presently exists relative to the accepting the generous donation of approximately 6,500 cubic yards, which is 10,400 ton, of soil from the One Wall Street project of Crown Properties LLC. Due to the time constraints involved, soil removal must be complete February 17, 2020. The nature of the emergency makes it necessary to take action without waiting the prescribed time as provided in the city charter.
Second.
Thank you.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Me.
Counselor
Oh,
Dolan.
thank you.
So, the February 17th deadline is hot upon us, this being the 13th. That makes it an emergency in my mind. And that's what the motion is all about, whether or not this is an emergency.
Thank you. So we will be taking two votes this evening. The first is on the emergency preamble, and the second will be on the emergency as it exists. So we will begin this evening with Counselor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Point of order, I'm sorry, isn't it still in committee right now?
Oh, yes, I just did
Okay.
mess that up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Darn, I'm gonna make first mistakes the first time up here. Thank you for
Stop.
correcting
It's all
me.
right.
You're doing
We're
fine.
good.
So we need to
Doing fine.
withdraw those
Yeah,
those
so
votes.
I withdraw my second.
Well, your second still stands,
yeah,
it's
it's
still
just-
in Council Conti's
Oh, all right,
committee,
yeah.
so we're gonna vote it out of your committee, and then it comes to the council.
All right, so second.
You know, that skipped right by me, Councilor Delicio, thank you.
Actually, no.
See, that's what happens when you go at 100 miles an hour.
This comes right,
Because this is an emergency and we are
Right.
in full council.
Full council.
We're not in committee meetings, we are in full council and this is a
go to
motion.
committee.
Yeah, we don't have to do the committee,
Okay.
yeah. Because we're not doing committee minutes, we're actually have a motion on the floor because it's an emergency motion. Phew, I had it right.
But you assigned it to his committee. Does that matter?
No, because we're bringing it out,
Okay.
right? Yeah,
You did assign it to committee.
Or we
so-
could
but
just
I don't
vote it out
think
of
that
committee
was
right this second,
necessary.
Vote it out
and
of committee.
who's
Yep.
worse for wear?
right.
If one of
Vote
us
it out
is
of
wrong.
committee. Bring it out of committee then, please.
So we're in committee.
Yep,
Great.
second.
Thank you, Councilor Dolan. You're both in a full understanding that this is an emergency. So I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. So the second vote that I'd like the committee to consider is from the docket of March 3rd, 2020. A move to approve the request of the mayor as an emergency measure to accept the generous donation of approximately 6,500 cubic yards, 10,400 ton of soil from the One Wall Street project of Crown Properties LLC.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Dolan.
May I make a friendly amendment, President Jackson? I would just ask Council Conti that we add language to the end that says to the wastewater department, because it's not specified where it's going to.
To the wastewater department.
Do I have a second?
I would
Second.
second that.
Thank you.
So let's vote on the amendment. The amendment is to add the language to the wastewater department at the end of the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, the motion passes. Now let's vote on the whole motion, which is to approve the request of the mayor, 6,500 cubic yards to the wastewater department.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. That concludes the business of the Capital Improvement City Development meeting this evening. I move for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. I don't have my phone with me tonight, but it's
6:55.
6:55. Thank you.
So now going on to,
All those in favor?
those in
Aye.
favor.
All in favor of adjourning? Yes. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. You're really pushing me tonight.
It's a Thursday thing.
And it's my first time up here in a long
It's an
time.
unusual situation.
So that,
Yeah, we're good.
committee is closed.
So there's only one committee report for this evening, which will be Councilor Conti. So we'll begin the vote this evening, starting with Mr. Blair.
First, we have to read the motion, correct? Vice President, we need to
Sorry?
read the motion first, before we take a vote.
Oh, yes, you have to
We're
do
now in
that,
full
too.
council,
Yep, you
correct?
are in full council.
Okay, so reporting for the Capital Improvements and City Development Committee to the full council. From the docket on March 3rd, 2020, I adopt the following emergency preamble that the Attleboro Municipal Council vote to take action as provided in the city's charter, section 2-9B, regarding the emergency which presently exists relative to accepting the generous donation of approximately 6,500 cubic yards, 10,400 tons of soil from the One Wall Street project of Crenally Properties LLC. Due to the time constraints involved, soil must be removed before February 17, 2020. The nature of the emergency makes it necessary to take action without waiting the prescribed time as provided in the city charter.
Second.
I heard Councilor Delicio first.
Who, Delicio?
Yes.
Okay.
Discussion? Right?
Right?
No discussion.
Okay.
Those in favor?
Roll call vote.
Just call for a vote.
Okay. I'll call for a vote. We're gonna start with Mr. Blair.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Acting President Jackson.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Conti?
I'm just adding some language to the second motion here.
Thank you.
From the docket of March 3rd, 2020, I move to approve the request of the mayor as an emergency measure to accept the generous donation of approximately 6,500 cubic yards, 10,400 ton of soil from the One Wall Street project of Crenally Properties LLC to the wastewater department.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think we covered that pretty well.
Very good. With that, we'll have a vote that's gonna begin with Counselor Dolan.
Ms. Dolan.
Yes.
Mr. Delicio.
Yes.
Vice President, I'm sorry. Mr. Waterman.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Acting President Jackson.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
Great, motion passes. Well, that concludes this evening's business. Thank you all for attending. I know everybody's busy during the week, and this was unexpected, and my apologies for my faux pas this evening. It was my first time as acting president. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.